The bank manager looked at my husband, then at me. "Mrs. Parker, I need to speak with you alone." Thomas gave a short laugh. "There's nothing Elaine knows about these accounts that I don't." The woman across from us didn't smile. "That's exactly why I'm asking you to step outside." Thomas stopped laughing. A minute later, the door closed behind him. Rebecca Cole turned her computer monitor toward me. My name appeared at the top of the screen. Elaine Marie Parker. It appeared again beneath that, then a third time. At the bottom of the page was a number. 842,000. I leaned closer. "What is that?" Rebecca folded her hands. "That is the current combined exposure associated with the business obligations on which you are listed as a personal guarantor." I stared at her. I'm sorry, a guarantor for what?" She opened 3 records. A commercial line of credit, equipment financing, a warehouse-related obligation, all connected to Parker Distribution, the company my husband had spent almost 25 years building, and all connected to me. "Mrs. Parker, do you recognize these guarantees?" I didn't. But when Thomas had seen the first page 5 minutes earlier, he had. That was the moment my day changed. Until then, I had thought we were at the bank for paperwork. A letter had arrived the week before asking me to update information associated with several accounts. I had left it on Thomas's desk because anything involving banks usually went to him. That had been our system for most of our 38-year marriage. Thomas handled the money. I handled almost everything else. When I showed him the letter, he glanced at it and said, "Probably a compliance update. I'll go with you." I didn't think twice. Why would I? Thomas had been doing this for decades. Taxes, insurance, investments, business loans, mortgage renewals. If a document contained 3 pages of fine print and a percentage, I handed it to him. He was good at it. That morning, he sat beside me in Rebecca Cole's office answering questions before I even understood why they were being asked. Rebecca was probably around 50, with short brown hair and the kind of calm voice that made every sentence sound deliberate. At first, the meeting was routine. Address, telephone number, identification. Then she asked, "Mrs. Parker, do you currently consider yourself an active guarantor for Parker Distribution?" I turned to Thomas. He answered, "These are business accounts." Rebecca looked at me instead. "Mrs. Parker?" "I'm not sure what you mean." Thomas leaned forward. "Elaine doesn't manage the company finances." "I understand. She signed some things a long time ago. I handle the rest." Rebecca waited. I felt embarrassed. Everyone in the room seemed to understand the question except me. So I did what I had done many times before. I looked at Thomas. He gave me a small nod that meant, "Don't worry, I've got this." Rebecca noticed. "When was the last time you personally reviewed the guarantees?" "I don't know." Thomas said, "She doesn't remember this stuff because she doesn't deal with it." Rebecca's eyes moved to him. "That's why I'd like to speak with her privately." Thomas objected. Not angrily. He was almost amused. He believed the whole thing was unnecessary. Then Rebecca asked him to leave. Now he was outside. And I was staring at $842,000 with my own name attached to it. Rebecca clicked open a scanned document. Near the bottom was a signature. Elaine Parker. I leaned closer. It looked like mine. Not close to mine. Mine. The capital E leaned right. The final loop in Parker rose slightly. I had signed my name that way for 40 years. When was this? March 2019. I searched my memory. 2019. Megan had been pregnant. My mother's health had been getting worse. Thomas had been expanding the warehouse. I could remember that year. I could not remember this page. Do you remember signing it? No. Rebecca watched me carefully. Do you remember anyone explaining that the guarantee was personal and continuing? I shook my head. What does continuing mean? It means the guarantee may continue to apply as the underlying business borrowing changes, subject to the terms of the documents. I stared at the screen. Could this affect our house? Potentially, depending on the circumstances and the agreements. My mouth went dry. Did Thomas sign me up for this? Your signature appears on the relevant documents. That isn't what I asked. Rebecca paused. No, it isn't. She opened another scan. Then another. My signature again. I felt a strange mixture of fear and embarrassment. Part of me wanted Thomas back in the room immediately. He would know what this meant. He would explain it. He would make the number smaller. Then another part of me remembered why Rebecca had made him leave. Why are you showing me this now? There was a recent review of the business facilities. Your guarantor information needed updating, and there were questions about direct communication with you. What questions? She looked at the document. Whether you understood the current obligations. I almost laughed. Apparently, somebody had finally asked the question I had never asked myself. Rebecca closed the first file. I'm going to bring your husband back in. Before I do, I need you to answer something without looking at him. I nodded. Mrs. Parker, if I had not shown you this screen today, would you have known your name was connected to approximately $842,000 in current business obligations? I looked at my own signature. No. She held my eyes for another second. Then she stood and opened the door. Thomas came back in. He took one look at the monitor and said, "Oh." That was all. But I knew my husband. He did not look surprised. Thomas sat down beside me. Rebecca left the records on the screen. He looked at the first document, then the second. What exactly did you tell Elaine? Rebecca answered calmly. I showed her the obligations associated with her guarantees. Thomas exhaled. Elaine, these are old business arrangements. Old? Renewed over time. Why didn't I know they added up to $842,000? He looked annoyed by the number. That's exposure, not a bill. I know that now. The company has assets, revenue, inventory, receivables. You're not about to lose the house. Rebecca said, I did not tell her she was. Thomas turned toward her. Then why put that number in front of her without context? Because it is her name. That ended the argument for a moment. I pointed at the scanned signature. Did I sign this? Yes. You remember? Of course. Do you remember me signing all three? You signed the required renewals. What did you tell me they were? Thomas stared at me. We discussed them. When? Over the years. That doesn't help me. He leaned back. Elaine, you hate financial paperwork. You always have. I would explain something, and half the time you'd tell me to show you where to sign. The sentence landed because it was partly true. I had said that. More than once. Rebecca asked, Mrs. Parker, does that sound familiar? Yes. Thomas looked relieved. Thank you. I turned toward him. That doesn't mean I knew this. His relief disappeared. Rebecca opened the 2019 page. Do you remember this particular signature? I studied it. After a few seconds, I said, It may be mine. Thomas rubbed his forehead. Of course it's yours. I ignored him. The signature looked real. That should have made me feel better. Instead, it made the whole situation harder. If Thomas had forged my name, then I knew where to place the blame. If I had actually signed, then I had to ask a more uncomfortable question. How many times had I put my name on something because my husband told me it was routine? Rebecca slid a packet toward me. These are copies you're entitled to review. I recommend you speak with someone independent before making any decisions. Thomas's expression hardened. She has me. Rebecca didn't react. I said independent. Thomas turned to me. Elaine, I can explain all of this at home. That was probably the most ordinary thing he said all morning. And maybe that was why I finally understood how frightened I was. For 38 years, when something involving money confused me, Thomas explained it. I had never needed another version. I want someone else to explain it first. He stared at me. There was hurt in his face. Then anger. But mostly disbelief. He had spent decades being the person I trusted with exactly this kind of problem. Now I had told him he was part of the problem. We left the bank 10 minutes later. Thomas didn't speak until we were in the car. Then he said, You embarrassed me. I looked at him. At the bank? Yes. That's what matters right now? That woman made a normal business arrangement sound suspicious. Was it normal? Yes. Did I know about it? You signed it. That is not the same answer. Thomas gripped the steering wheel. You're acting like I tricked you. I don't know what happened. He glanced at me. Elaine, I didn't forge your signature. I haven't accused you of forging anything. But you're thinking it. I looked down at the packet in my lap. The truth was worse. I was hoping for it. A fake signature would have made the story clean. Instead, I had a page that looked exactly like something I had signed. And I couldn't remember why. Thomas was right about another thing. I had trusted him with money willingly. That mattered. If I was going to understand what had happened, I could not rewrite our marriage into a story where I had never made choices of my own. When we married, I was 24. Thomas was 27. I worked at an elementary school office. He was in sales. I was good with people, schedules, emergencies, children, parents who arrived angry and left calmer. Thomas was good with numbers. He balanced our checkbook down to the penny. He filed receipts and envelopes by month. He could look at a mortgage offer and tell me which fee mattered and which one was nonsense. I found it impressive. 5 years into our marriage, I paid the electric bill twice and forgot the water bill completely. It was not a catastrophe. But I was working full-time, Megan was 2, my mother had just had surgery, and I remember sitting at the kitchen table close to tears because the account balance was lower than I expected. Thomas came home and found me there. What happened? I can't keep track of everything. He looked through the bills. Then he sat beside me. You don't have to. I should. Why? Because adults are supposed to know where their money goes. He smiled. Adults are also allowed to divide the work. He took the envelopes from me. Let me handle the bills. That did not feel like control. It felt like relief. Over time, bills became taxes. Taxes became insurance. Then investments. I knew what we earned. I knew roughly what was in retirement. I knew whether we could afford a vacation. But if you had asked me which account held what or what rate we were paying on the mortgage, I would have called Thomas. He knew. I did not. For many years, that arrangement worked. When Thomas started Parker Distribution at 40, money stopped being abstract. The company nearly broke us. For the first 18 months, we lived mostly on my salary and savings. Thomas borrowed against part of his retirement account. I stopped buying anything I didn't absolutely need. We canceled a vacation. I remember lying awake beside him while he calculated payroll in his head. The first personal guarantee was different from the later ones because I remember it clearly. Thomas did not hide it. He sat across from me at the kitchen table with a legal pad. The bank needs us personally behind the line of credit. What does that mean? If the company can't pay, they can pursue us under the guarantee. Could we lose the house? In the worst case, there's risk. I nearly refused. We argued. Thomas showed me numbers. He explained receivables. I asked him to explain them again because I didn't understand the first time. Eventually I said, if we don't do this, what happens? I may have to close. That was the truth. I signed. A year later, when another renewal came, Thomas asked if I wanted to sit in on the meeting with the banker. I said no. My mother had another appointment that afternoon. I remember telling him, you know this better than I do. Just tell me if anything important changes. That sentence would bother me later, because Thomas remembered it too. There was another occasion, maybe 2 years after that, when I got frustrated with a stack of forms and said, please just tell me where to sign. I said it. No one forced me. If Thomas had stopped the story there, he would have had a strong argument. Elaine didn't want to deal with finances. Elaine trusted him. Elaine asked him to handle it. All true. But something changed after the company stopped struggling. Parker Distribution grew. The first Christmas party had 16 people. 5 years later, there were nearly 50. Thomas bought trucks instead of leasing old ones. The warehouse expanded. There were managers now, accounting staff, a payroll department. The company stopped being a fragile idea at our kitchen table. And I stopped asking questions because I thought the frightening part was over. The paperwork became routine. Sometimes Thomas would bring home a folder and say, annual bank renewal. I would ask, anything different? Usually he said, nothing important. Sometimes he asked me to sign 1 page. Sometimes 3. Once he left a packet on the counter with yellow tabs marking the signature lines. I was packing food to take to my mother's assisted living facility. What is this? Bank paperwork. Something new? No, same basic structure. I flipped through a few pages. I understood almost none of them. Is the house at risk? Thomas was answering an email on his phone. Nothing we can't handle. I signed. That was how it worked. Not every year. Not every document. But often enough. 2 days after the bank meeting, I sat across from Nora Patel in a small conference room and told her all of this. Nora had been recommended through an independent referral list Rebecca gave me. She was 51, wore plain black glasses, and had a way of listening that made me careful with my words. I liked her because she did not immediately tell me I had been victimized. I also hated her for the same reason. She arranged the bank documents in date order. "When did you first knowingly guarantee the company debt?" I told her. "Did Thomas explain that first one?" "Yes." "Clearly?" "Yes." "Did you understand the risk?" "Enough to be scared." "Good." I frowned. "Good?" "It gives us an honest starting point." She pointed to the first document. "If we pretend you never consented to anything, we're going to misunderstand what actually changed." I nodded. She was right. Nora moved to the next renewal. "Did you read this?" "I don't remember." "The signature appears consistent with yours." "I know." She continued down the timeline. Then she stopped. "This first guarantee isn't the one that interests me." "Why?" "Because the company needed it." "What about the others?" She looked at the dates. Some of them were signed after Parker Distribution was already in a very different financial position. I leaned forward. "How different?" "That's what we need to understand." Then she moved one page away from the others. "Because if the emergency ended but your exposure kept growing, the question changes." For 3 days, I kept hoping Nora would find a fake signature. It would have simplified everything. I wanted one clean line between what Thomas had done and what I had done. A forged signature would have given me that. Instead, the records kept placing me inside the story. There was an email from Thomas in 2014. "Bank renewal papers coming home tonight." And my reply? "Okay." There was another exchange 2 years later. "Need your signature on the Parker file." I answered, "Leave it on the kitchen table." Then there was one that made me close my eyes. "Signed everything, left it beside your briefcase." I had sent that. I remembered the message once I saw it. Nora watched me. "You don't have to like the evidence." "I don't." "But we need to use it." "So I signed these." "Most likely, yes." "I was hoping I hadn't." "I know." I looked at her. "That sounds terrible." "It sounds human." She opened the earliest guarantee. This one was narrow. The company had limited collateral and unstable cash flow. Then the next. "The later facilities are different." "How?" "Larger line, different collateral package, equipment borrowing, warehouse expansion." And my guarantee kept moving with it? "Yes." I rubbed my forehead. I really should have read these. "Yes." I looked at her. She didn't soften it. "I'm not going to tell you signing documents you didn't read was a good decision. Thomas would like you." "Maybe." That made me laugh despite myself. Then Nora continued. "But your decision to sign is only one part of the story. What's the other part? How the documents were presented to you." She pushed a renewal across the table. "Did Thomas tell you this was materially different from the first arrangement?" "No." "Are you sure?" "As sure as I can be." "What do you remember?" "Routine renewal, same basic thing, words like that." She nodded. "That distinction matters emotionally. Legally is a different question." "I'm not trying to sue him." "Good. Then we can focus on understanding what happened before deciding what you want to do." That was the first time someone had separated those things for me. Understanding. Action! I realized I rarely did it that way. Usually something happened, Thomas understood it first, and by the time I heard about it, a decision had already been made. Nora opened an internal bank summary from several years after the first guarantee. The company's cash flow had improved. Receivables were stronger. Customer concentration was lower. I barely understood the language, but the conclusion was clear. Parker Distribution was healthier. This looks good. It was. Then why did the bank still need me? Need may not be the right word. I looked at her. What's the right word? Your guarantee made certain borrowing easier. For Thomas? For the company. Same thing? No. That answer mattered. Nora was careful not to turn Thomas into the company. Would Parker Distribution have gotten financing without me? Probably some financing. Maybe not on the same terms. Maybe not at the same scale. So using my guarantee could have saved money. Yes. Helped the company expand. Yes. Created jobs. Yes. There was the counterweight. I had benefited too. Our family had lived comfortably because Parker Distribution succeeded. We put both children through college. We traveled. We helped Megan with a down payment. The borrowed money had gone into the business, and our family had benefited from the company's success. He was growing a business that supported our family and dozens of employees. That made the betrayal harder to name. If it helped all of us, maybe I'm overreacting. Nora looked at me. Do you believe that? I don't know. She waited. I looked back at the documents. The first time Thomas explained everything because he needed me to say yes. And later, he stopped asking for a real yes. Nora said nothing. I continued. Maybe because I kept giving him one anyway. And that's possible. That was what made the whole thing uncomfortable. Thomas hadn't tricked me into trusting him. For years, he'd given me reasons to. That was what made the whole thing so difficult to sort out. Nora turned to another page. This facility increased after the company had already recovered. What was it for? Expansion. What kind? Warehouse, inventory capacity, equipment? I knew the period. Thomas had been excited then. He talked about finally getting the company where he always believed it could go. Could he have brought in outside investors instead? Possibly. He hates investors. Nora looked up. Why? He says anyone who puts money in eventually wants to tell you what to do? That would be relevant. I thought of Thomas's pride. Parker Distribution was his life's work. He wanted control. My signature helped him keep it. That afternoon, I left Nora's office with a different question. The first guarantee had been about survival. The later ones might have been about something else. I asked Thomas about it that night. I should have waited. Nora had told me there were still records to review. But I came home and found Thomas opening mail at the kitchen counter, the same place where I remembered signing more than one renewal. When did Parker Distribution stop being in danger? He looked up. What? The first guarantee. We signed because the company could fail. That was more than 20 years ago. I know. When did that stop being true? He set the envelopes down. There wasn't a date. By 2016? He frowned. Why 2016? Was the company stable then? Stable is relative. Profitable? Yes. Growing? Yes. Then why was my personal guarantee getting larger? His expression changed. So this is what Nora is doing. She's showing me the timeline. I offered to show you the timeline. No, you offered to explain it. What's the difference? I'm starting to think that's the problem. Thomas turned away. I could see his patience thinning. Elaine, businesses use debt. I know. Growth costs money. I know. Then what are we arguing about? Why did it still require me? It didn't require you in the way you mean. What way do I mean? He exhaled. Your guarantee improved our borrowing position. Could you have gotten the money another way? Yes. That surprised me. What way? Outside equity, different lenders, more expensive structures. Why didn't you? Because outside investors want control. And you didn't want to give up control. No. So my name helped you keep it. He looked at me. Our household support helped the company grow. There was something almost fair about the way he said it. Our household. Because the household had benefited. Thomas could point to 1,000 things Parker Distribution paid for. College. Vacations. A comfortable retirement plan. My mother's private assisted living room for the last 18 months of her life. I could not pretend I had received nothing from the choices he made. He reminded me of that. You think the business was some hobby I protected for myself? No. You benefited from every good year. I know. The kids did. I know. Employees did. Yes. And when I asked you to come to bank meetings, what did you say? I looked at him. He remembered too. You said no. Sometimes. You told me you trusted me. Yes. You literally said, just tell me if anything important changes. I felt the words land. Because I had. Thomas continued. What was I supposed to do? Drag you into every annual credit review? No. Then what? Tell me when something important changed. His mouth opened. Then closed. I stepped closer. Did my exposure increase? Yes. Was that important? He didn't answer. I kept going. Did the company stop needing the guarantee to survive? That isn't how banking works. Thomas, he rubbed his forehead. You're simplifying this. Then help me. The old version of me would have stopped there. Thomas would explain. I would decide it sounded complicated. We would both be relieved. This time I asked a specific question. When we stopped being desperate and started using my guarantee to expand, why didn't you sit down and tell me? Thomas looked tired. I probably thought you already understood. Why would you think that? Because we had been doing it for years. That answer almost sounded reasonable. We had done it for so long that Thomas no longer seemed to think of each renewal as a new decision. Maybe I didn't either. That was his strongest defense. And for a while I almost accepted it. Until Nora called the next afternoon. She had found a 2019 banknote. We met at her office. She highlighted one paragraph. Please confirm Mrs. Parker understands that her guarantee is personal and continuing. Recommend direct review with guarantor or confirmation that Mr. Parker has fully explained terms. I read it slowly. What does that mean? It means someone at the bank wanted assurance that you understood. Why? Possibly because you weren't directly involved in the conversations. Did they contact me? I don't see direct contact. She turned the page. They contacted Thomas. There was an email from the bank officer. Thomas, please make sure Elaine understands the continuing nature of the guarantee before execution. She is welcome to call me directly if she has any questions. Below it was Thomas's response. 4 words. I'll review it with her. I read the sentence again. Nora waited. Did he? I searched 2019 in my memory. My mother had fallen twice that winter. Megan had been pregnant. Thomas had been working constantly on the warehouse expansion. I remembered papers on the kitchen counter. I remembered being late to visit my mother. I remembered Thomas saying, just the annual renewal. Sign the tabs. I looked at Nora. No. Take your time. He didn't review it. You're sure? As sure as I can be. Did he explain the personal guarantee was continuing? No. The amount? No. That the business no longer needed your support for survival but wanted it for expansion capacity? No. Nora looked back at the email. This is the first point where I stopped focusing on what you understood. She tapped Thomas's reply. And start focusing on what he knew you needed explained. For almost a week, Thomas's best defense had been, we had always done it this way. Then I found the moment someone told him that wasn't enough. And Thomas said he would tell me more. I printed the email. Not because I needed paper. Because I wanted something on the table Thomas could not turn into a disagreement about memory. He came home just after 7. I waited until he ate. Then I placed the page in front of him. Thomas read it. His face barely moved, but he did not ask what it was. You remember this? I remember the bank officer. That isn't what I asked. He read it again. I remember renewals around that time. The bank told you to make sure I understood. Yes. You said you would. Yes. Did you? He looked up. I don't remember a specific sit-down. I do remember what happened. His jaw tightened. What? I described the kitchen. My mother's appointment. The papers. The tabs. The phrase annual renewal. Thomas listened. Then he said, that doesn't mean I didn't explain anything. What did you explain? I don't know, it was 7 years ago. Did you tell me the company was increasing its borrowing? You knew we were expanding. That wasn't my question. Did I tell you the exact credit exposure? I don't know. Did you tell me my personal guarantee was continuing? I don't know. Did you tell me the bank had invited me to call them directly? He looked down. No. That answer was different. Clean. Why not? Because you weren't going to call them. You didn't know that. Elaine. There was the tone again. Not cruel. Certain. You hated those conversations. Yes. You asked me to deal with them. Yes. You said you trusted me. Yes. So I handled it. I sat back. And that's your answer? It's part of it. What's the rest? Thomas stayed quiet for a long time. Then he said, do you want the ugly answer? Yes. It was easier. At least it was honest. Easier how? Bank meetings went faster if I handled them. Because I asked questions? Yes. Because I didn't understand? Sometimes. Because I might say no? He hesitated. Sometimes. The room went very still. That hurt more than the email. You knew that. I knew you worried. I had a right to worry. I know. Did you? Thomas pushed the page away. Elaine, you're acting like I sat down one day and decided to deceive you. Did you? No. I believed him. I didn't think he had planned this from the beginning. I think he noticed that things moved faster when I stayed out of the details, and after a while he stopped questioning that arrangement. Thomas continued. You didn't want to run the finances. No. You didn't want to spend hours in bank meetings or reading credit agreements. No, I didn't. Then why are you acting like I kept you out of them? I'm not. Then what are you saying? I looked at the email. There's a difference between not wanting to run the finances and giving you permission to decide what I was allowed to understand. Thomas stared at me. I never decided that. You did right here. I touched the page. The bank told you I needed to understand. You decided a sentence in the kitchen was enough. You don't know exactly what I told you. No? I nodded. That's fair. He seemed surprised. I continued. And I also know I signed. I know I told you to handle things. I know I trusted you. I'm not trying to erase my part. His shoulders relaxed slightly. Then I said, but my trust was not permission to stop telling me when the deal changed. The relief disappeared. Thomas looked away. You always said you trusted me. I did. You're saying that like it was some tool I used against you. I'm asking when it became one. He rubbed both hands over his face. You know what I remember? What? The first guarantee. So do I. You were terrified. Yes. I explained every page because you kept asking me if we could lose the house. Yes. You finally said, Thomas, I trust you. I can't do this every year. Just tell me if something important changes. I closed my eyes. I remembered saying something very close to that. He had a point. Maybe stronger than I wanted him to have. When I opened my eyes, Thomas was watching me. I did say that. Thank you. But you keep hearing the first half. What? I trust you. I touched the email. You forgot the second half. His face changed. Tell me if something important changes. Neither of us spoke. Thomas looked back at the printed page. The fight seemed to go out of him. I should have explained it better. Yes. I should have given you the option to say no. Yes. He looked at me. I don't know when I stopped doing that. That answer felt more honest than anything he had said since the bank. And somehow, because it was honest, it hurt more. Megan came over on Sunday. I had no intention of turning our daughter into a witness. She was 35, married, with 2 children and a full life of her own. So I asked one question. If you had a financial problem, who would you call? She didn't hesitate. Dad? Why? She smiled. Because you hate money stuff. I felt something tighten in my chest. How do you know? She frowned. Know what? That I hate money stuff. Mom, you do. Maybe. She looked at me more carefully. What's going on? Just answer. Megan thought about it. You always say Dad handles finances. I do. And Dad jokes that you don't speak finance. There it was. The phrase. I remembered the Christmas dinner. Our son had been talking about refinancing his house. I tried to warn him to pay attention to closing costs. Thomas laughed. Careful, your mother doesn't speak finance. Everyone laughed, including me. It had felt harmless. Thomas couldn't cook. I didn't understand investment statements. Every family has jokes. But suddenly I remembered how often that particular joke had done useful work. A mortgage broker asked me something. Thomas answered. A tax preparer handed me a form. Thomas took it. Megan asked how much we had in one retirement account. I said, ask your father. Not because Thomas had ordered me to. Because we all knew. Dad knows. Mom doesn't. Megan watched my face. Did Dad do something? I'm trying to figure that out. Are you in trouble? No. Is he? I don't know. She moved closer. Mom, you know you're not stupid, right? I looked at her. I didn't say I was. You look like somebody did. That nearly undid me. Thomas had never called me stupid. But after enough jokes, and enough times he answered for me, I had started treating money like something I simply wasn't good enough to touch. And I had helped build that habit. I made the jokes. I passed the questions to Thomas. I stopped opening statements. If I was going to hold Thomas responsible for benefiting from that arrangement, I also had to admit how comfortable the arrangement had sometimes been for me. That did not excuse what he failed to tell me. But it stopped me from turning myself into someone who had no agency until the day a bank manager rescued her. Rebecca had shown me a screen. The rest I still had to do. Nora called later that afternoon. I finished the first pass on your options. Can I get my name off everything? Eventually, probably, instantly no. What if I challenged the guarantees? That could become expensive and disruptive. For Thomas? For everyone. She explained the consequences without drama. The bank could tighten terms. Parker Distribution might have to replace financing quickly. Assets could need to be pledged or sold. Expansion might stop. Litigation was possible if the dispute became aggressive. Could the company fail? I don't think that should be your starting assumption. But it could be hurt. Yes. I thought about Parker Distribution's employees. People I knew. People who had worked there 15 years. They had mortgages too. Children. Health insurance. They didn't do anything to me. No. What's the other option? Restructure the support. How? Use more company collateral. Thomas contributes additional capital. Reduce certain facilities. Remove you from future guarantees over an agreed transition. Would it cost him? Yes. The company? Yes. Would it survive? If the numbers we've reviewed are accurate, there's a reasonable path. For several days I had imagined making Thomas feel what I felt. Fear. Loss of control. Then I pictured 90 people learning the company had lost financing because the owner and his wife were fighting. That was not justice. It was collateral damage. Nora asked, "What do you want?" "I don't know." "Then don't decide today." I was quiet. She added, "Elaine, before you decide what Thomas deserves, decide what you need." After we hung up, I walked through the house. For 38 years, so many of my choices had been framed around what the family needed. The children. My mother. Thomas. The company. I did not regret that. But I realized how rarely I had practiced answering a question where my own needs were allowed to be the starting point. I went to Parker Distribution before I made my decision. I had been there dozens of times. Christmas parties. Company picnics. Retirement lunches. But I had never walked through the warehouse thinking about what my signature had helped support. Forklifts moved between racks. A dispatcher argued cheerfully with someone on the phone. A young man I recognized waved. "Morning, Mrs. Parker?" On his desk was a photograph of two little girls. Near the break room, somebody had taped a crayon drawing to a filing cabinet. Daddy's truck. Thomas had made decisions I had every right to question. But the company was bigger than his ego. That mattered. Later, Nora laid out the choices again. If you challenge everything immediately, you may have leverage. Would it get me out faster? Maybe, or it could create a fight that lasts longer. And restructuring? You agree on a path to replace your guarantees rather than pretending they never existed. Because I did sign them. Yes. I appreciated that she always brought me back to that. I had signed the papers. That part was mine. His choices didn't erase mine, and mine didn't erase his. What would Thomas have to do? Put more business assets behind the debt, possibly contribute capital personally. The company may need to sell one non-core property and postpone part of the expansion. So he loses something. Yes. Would employees lose jobs? Not necessarily. That was enough for me. Thomas and I sat down that evening. He already knew Nora had spoken with the bank. He was angry before I finished my first sentence. "You're going to jeopardize the company over paperwork you signed." I did not answer immediately. A week earlier, that sentence would have made me question myself. Now it sounded incomplete. No. He stared at me. No? I'm deciding what happens to my name from now on. You already decided. You signed. I decided under the information I had. That sounds like lawyer nonsense. It sounds like marriage. Thomas leaned back. What do you want? The company survives. His shoulders dropped slightly. Good. I don't challenge everything just to punish you. More relief. Thank you. But I'm coming off the guarantees. His face changed. That isn't simple. I know. We'll lose capacity. I know. Expansion stops. For now. You don't understand what that means. For the first time, the sentence did not embarrass me. Then explain it. Thomas blinked. What? Explain what happens. He started. Credit limits. Collateral coverage. Borrowing base. I stopped him after 30 seconds. What's a borrowing base? He stared at me. Then explained. I asked another question. He became impatient. Elaine, this is exactly what I'm talking about. What are you talking about? This takes forever. I almost laughed. Maybe that's why you stopped doing it. He looked away. Keep going. For almost 40 minutes, Thomas explained what the restructuring would do. I did not understand everything, but something happened that had not happened in years. When I was confused, I did not apologize. I asked. At one point, Thomas skipped over a consequence. I caught it. Wait, if the company sells that property, does the cash go to the line? He looked at me. Yes. Then say that. He nodded. No argument. By the end, I understood enough to know the restructuring would hurt. Not destroy Parker Distribution. Hurt. Thomas would put in his own capital. A small property would probably be sold. Part of the warehouse expansion would stop. Future borrowing would become more conservative. I looked at him. I can live with that. I don't know if the company can. Nora thinks it can. His jaw tightened at her name. She's making you think you're some kind of victim. No. I shook my head. I signed things I should have read. I trusted you more than I should have. Those are mine. Thomas looked surprised. Then what are we doing? I'm making sure that because I signed before, you don't get to assume I'll keep signing now. I gave him the terms. Independent access to joint financial information. No future personal guarantees without separate review. No use of jointly held property for business obligations without my written approval. My current guarantees replaced as the restructuring progressed. Thomas read the list. You're treating me like I'm dishonest. No, I answered more quietly. I'm treating myself like someone who gets independent information. That's the same thing. It only feels the same because you've been the information for so long. Thomas looked down at the pages. After a minute, he said, What if I agree? Then I'll work with the bank so this doesn't become a war. And us? I had known that question was coming. I don't know. He looked hurt. I was sorry for that. But I was not going to invent certainty because uncertainty made Thomas uncomfortable. I'll help protect the company, I said. I'm not protecting either of us from what this did to the marriage. The restructuring took 6 weeks, and it was far less dramatic than I had imagined. The consequences showed up in ordinary business decisions. Parker Distribution postponed part of the warehouse expansion. The company pledged additional assets. Thomas put personal capital into the business. A non-essential commercial property was sold. The borrowing facilities were reduced and reorganized. My name came off future guarantees. The existing exposure was replaced in stages until I was no longer supporting new business debt. Thomas hated almost every step. He also did them. That mattered. Nora insisted I read every document associated with my release. The first afternoon I lasted 25 minutes. Then I pushed the packet away. This is why I let Thomas do it. Nora looked up. You can stop for today. I should be able to understand this. Why? Because I'm 62. What does your age have to do with loan language? I frowned. She pointed to a paragraph. Do you know what this means? No. Good. Good? Now you know what to ask. She explained it. I asked a second question. Then another. One was so basic I almost apologized. Nora answered without reacting. Nothing terrible happened. That sounds small. It wasn't. For years I had confused lack of experience with lack of ability. Thomas had encouraged that confusion. But I had carried it long after he left the room. I opened a checking account in my own name. Not secret. Not to hide money from Thomas. Because I wanted one account whose statements came directly to me and whose decisions did not pass through him first. Then I reviewed our retirement accounts. I learned what was in each one, how it was invested, what the fees were. I did not become good at finance. I became less afraid of looking stupid. That was more useful. Thomas and I moved into separate bedrooms. I still loved him. That was the inconvenient part. 38 years together didn't disappear just because I finally understood one part of our marriage differently. I still noticed when he forgot his blood pressure medication. I still bought the coffee he liked. One evening, he knocked on the guest room door. "Can I come in?" I nodded. He sat in the chair near the window. "I talked to Megan." I stiffened. "What did she say?" "She asked why I always talked about you like you were a child when money came up." I looked down. Thomas continued. "I told her I didn't." "And?" She gave me examples. A small, sad laugh escaped him. "Apparently there were a lot." "There were. I didn't notice." "I know. That doesn't make it better." "No." We sat quietly. Then he said, "I'm sorry." "For what?" He looked surprised. "I want you to say it." Thomas thought for a while. "I'm sorry I stopped explaining." I waited. "I'm sorry I treated your questions like obstacles." "Better." "I'm sorry I let the joke about you not understanding money become something everybody believed." I felt my eyes sting. "Did you believe it?" He looked at the floor. "Eventually, yes." That hurt. But at least it was true. Thomas looked up. "Do you think I was trying to control you?" "I don't know if you started that way." "I wasn't." "I believe you." His face softened. Then I continued. "I think you started by helping." "Yes." "Then you got used to making the decisions." He nodded. "It was faster." "Yes." "You didn't have to explain." "Yes." "You didn't have to hear me worry." "Yes." "Or say no." A longer pause. "Yes." I took a breath. "I don't think you planned it." Thomas looked relieved. I wasn't finished. "I think once it became useful, you stopped caring enough to fix it." The relief disappeared. He sat with that. Then nodded. "I don't know how to argue with that." "You don't have to." He rubbed his hands together. "Can you forgive me?" I did not have an answer. So I gave him the truth. I don't know." He looked toward the door. "Is that better than no?" "I don't know that either." Thomas almost smiled. Then he stood. At the doorway, he stopped. "I should have kept asking whether you understood." "Yes." "And you should have kept asking questions." I looked at him. "Yes." "That was important too." He left. For the first time, I could acknowledge my part without using it to erase his. 3 months after Rebecca Cole turned that monitor toward me, Megan called with a question about her retirement plan. "Dad's in a meeting." "So I'm second choice?" She laughed. "For now." "What do you need?" She emailed me the statement. I opened it. I did not understand everything. That no longer felt like evidence against me. "Give me a little time." "Mom, you don't have to figure it out." "I know." I looked at the page. "I want to." Parker Distribution survived. The warehouse expansion was delayed. Thomas complained about the bank. The trucks kept leaving every morning. Employees kept getting paid. My name no longer sat underneath the company's borrowing. Thomas and I started counseling. We were still married, still in the same house, still uncertain. One afternoon, a new insurance document arrived. Thomas read it first. Then he placed it on the kitchen counter. "There's a section you need to sign." For years, the next sentence would have been, I marked the page. Or, "It's standard." This time he said nothing. I read. On the second page, I stopped. "What does this mean?" Thomas explained. "I still don't understand." He started to answer faster, then caught himself. He tried again. I read the paragraph once more. "Does signing this change anything about the house?" "No." "How do you know?" He pointed to the relevant section. I followed it. Then I said, "I'm sending this to Nora before I sign." I saw the old impatience flash across his face. It lasted less than a second. "Okay." The next day, Nora told me the document was fine. I signed it. It was a small thing, but I noticed it. He waited. I asked. I checked. Then I signed because I understood what I was signing. For years, I thought trust meant not checking. I thought asking questions after Thomas had already given me an answer meant I was doubting my husband. I know better now. Trust doesn't mean never asking questions. It means being able to ask them without being made to feel foolish for asking. I still don't love financial paperwork. I'm still slower with it than Thomas. That was never the real problem. The problem was that somewhere along the way, both of us began treating Elaine doesn't know as if it meant Elaine doesn't need to know. I won't live that way again. Whether our marriage fully recovers, I still can't tell you. Thomas is sorry. I believe him. I also know apologies can happen faster than trust returns. So tell me, what would be harder for you to forgive? The financial risk Thomas put in Elaine's name, or the years he let her believe she wasn't capable of understanding it? And if you want more stories about the truths people hide inside long marriages, and what happens when someone finally starts asking the questions they were taught not to ask, subscribe to Scarred Minds.